No being has bound the sky. Only those rule it who have the courage to tear through it. When in the mountains of Afghanistan, dozens of Taliban fighters ambush an American convoy and all male pilots are unavailable. It is then that a woman F-16 pilot, Captain Sarah Mitchell, sits in the cockpit and makes a decision that not only saves 20 soldiers' lives, but also changes the history of the U.S. Air Force forever. Her unauthorized strike proved to the world that victory in war depends not on gender, but on skill and courage. This is the story of the pilot who made the skies free for everyone. Captain Sarah Mitchell had been logging flight hours in the F-16 Falcon for 2 years, but every time her mission stayed within the same limits. Patrol, escort, recon, strike authority. Not for female pilots. That was the line she kept hearing again and again from Colonel James Porter. When Sarah joined the Air Force Academy, her dreams were bigger than the sky itself. She wanted to do everything her male counterparts did: dogfights, precision strikes, saving lives under fire. But under the Pentagon's gender restrictions policy, women pilots were confined to support roles only. Her frustration showed in her eyes every time. She climbed out of the cockpit after a flight. "Sir, why not me? I've logged 600 hours, earned perfect scores in weapons employment tests, even outperformed many male pilots in red flag exercises." But Colonel Porter's response was always dry. "Policy isn't made on this base, Captain. Follow your orders." Her weapons systems officer, Major Daniel Harris, a decorated combat veteran, would often tell her in the cockpit, "Sarah, your hands are sharper on the stick than anyone I've flown with." But until DC wakes up, we're stuck babysitting convoys. Sarah would give a faint smile, but she could never hide the fire burning inside her heart. Morning of July 28, 2011. A routine patrol mission was assigned out of Kandahar Air Base. The task was clear: escort a NATO convoy moving through the Helmand Valley. It was the same boring escort Sarah had flown many times before. The convoy had received an intelligence warning that Taliban activity was high, but the official orders remained simple: observe and report. Do not engage unless fired upon. In the cockpit, Sarah ran her systems check. One by one, green lights lit up across the HUD. Harris said in his calm voice, "All systems nominal, Captain. Same babysitting, different day." But Sarah's heart was running on a different track. Different day. Maybe not, she whispered to herself. The convoy had barely gone 30 miles, deep when a desperate transmission came through on the emergency frequency. Any aircraft, this is Convoy Alpha. We are taking heavy fire. Multiple RPGs, machine guns on both ridges. Request immediate close air support." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She checked the coordinates. They were outside her strike authority boundary. The rule was clear: report to command. Wait for the mail strike package to arrive. But Harris's eyes showed panic.
"Sarah, if we wait, they're gone."
"Those ridges are kill zones. They don't have 20 minutes. 1,000 voices echoed in Sarah's mind. Orders. Court-martial. Career finished? But in front of her eyes were 20 convoy soldiers about to be slaughtered by 60 Taliban fighters. Sarah took a deep breath, gripped the stick tightly, and made her decision. "Major, lock Mavericks on those ridgelines. We're going in." Harris, stunned, replied, "That's a direct violation, Captain." Sarah's voice was steady. "So is letting Americans die when we can stop it." The F-16 dropped its nose. Afterburners roared to life, and Sarah pushed the throttle, diving straight into the valley. This was the moment when her life, her career, and the history of the Air Force were about to change forever. As Sarah Mitchell's F-16 dove toward the Helmand Valley, the rush of air thundered inside the cockpit. The afterburner's flame tore through the sky, shifting it from blue to blazing orange. Harris's hands were locked firmly on the Maverick missile controls. On the HUD, enemy heat signatures began to light up one after another. The Taliban had fortified both ridgelines with defensive positions. RPG launchers and DSHK heavy. Machine guns poured relentless fire on the American convoy. The vehicles swerved in zigzag maneuvers. But inside the narrow valley, escape seemed impossible. The desperate voice of Convoy Alpha crackled over the radio once more. "This is Alpha 6. We're pinned down. Multiple KIA, we need immediate air support. Any aircraft out there?" Sarah micro-tilted, leveling her aircraft directly over the valley. "Convoy Alpha, this is Falcon 2-1, we're overhead. Mark your position with smoke, hold tight." At the front of the convoy, a Humvee fired a red smoke grenade. Sarah caught it visually. Harris reported, "Targets locked. North Ridge, 3 RPG teams. South Ridge, 2 heavy MG nests. Recommend Mavericks first, then strafing run with the 20mm. In Sarah's eyes burned the fire that policy had suppressed for years. Do it, Fox 3. Harris squeezed the trigger. On the HUD, missile away flashed. From the F-16's right wing, an AGM-65 Maverick roared free. The heat-seeking missile streaked straight toward the northern ridge of the valley, turning an RPG nest into a storm of fire. Direct hit! RPG neutralized, Harris shouted. Sarah rolled the aircraft and dropped the nose toward the south ridge. Second target, South MG Nest, Fox 3. Another Maverick launched. The explosion ripped through the machine gun nest, and the remaining Taliban fighters scattered in fear, scrambling into the gorge. The convoy's radio erupted with frantic voices. Falcon 2-1, you're angels. Enemy fire decreasing, but we're still taking rounds from the west slope. Sarah's voice came back calm and steady. Copy Alpha 6. Stay down, we're not done yet. Sarah pitched the F-16 down, sharply from 3,000 feet. The 20-meter Vulcan cannon was armed. As she swept low through the valley, the gun thundered. The tracers ripped through the Taliban fighters hiding on the west slope, scattering them in panic. The convoy's morale reignited. Some vehicles deployed smoke screens to cover the evacuation of wounded soldiers. Harris drew in a sharp breath. Damn, Sarah, that was textbook. You just saved half the convoy already, Sarah replied firmly. Not enough. They're still boxed in. We need to clear an exit route. Colonel Porter's voice thundered over the radio frequency. The base had picked up the unauthorized transmission. Falcon 2-1, this is command. You are outside strike authority. Abort mission immediately and return to patrol zone. That is a direct order. Harris's heart sank. Sarah, that's Porter. If we ignore this, we're done. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then locked her eyes on the convoy, pinned down in the valley, 30 American, soldiers bleeding on the ground. Daniel, careers can be rebuilt. Dead soldiers can't, we're staying. Harris slowly nodded. Then let's finish this, Captain. Sarah scanned the valley's southern exit on her HUD. The Taliban had set up barricades there, with a mortar team deployed to block the convoy's escape. That mortar team is the key. Kill them and Alpha can move south. Harris acquired the lock, but the Mavericks were gone. Only unguided Mk-82 bombs and cannon ammo remained. Sarah rolled the plane, set her dive angle. The bomb release buzzer blared. Pickle! 2 Mk-82 bombs dropped onto the southern exit. The explosion turned both the mortar team and the barricades into rubble. The voice of Convoy Alpha roared over the radio. Falcon 2-1, exit corridor is clear. We can move. Cover us! Sarah's reply came calm but fierce. Move fast. We've got your backs. The convoy, with its wounded loaded, began racing toward the southern exit. The Taliban unleashed desperate fire, but Sarah silenced them with another cannon run. Over the radio came Alpha 6's voice. Falcon 2-1, all vehicles moving, casualties on board. We owe you our lives. How copy? A wave of relief washed over Sarah's heart until new signatures began blinking on the radar. Harris's voice carried a tremor of fear. Sarah, I'm picking up multiple fast movers inbound. Looks like MiG-29s. And they're not ours. Sarah's grip tightened on the stick. The convoy was just clearing the valley, and now enemy fighter jets were swooping in. In her eyes gleamed a resolve as hard as steel. Then it's time to prove the sky belongs to everyone. Sarah Mitchell's heartbeat quickened as 2 new blips appeared on the radar. Harris's voice came tight with fear. Sarah. Confirmation, 2 MiG-29 Fulcrums bearing east, closing fast. These are hostile. The convoy was just clearing the southern exit. Their only chance of survival was to escape. But if the MiGs reached them, the entire column could be wiped out. Sarah drew a deep breath. Daniel, lock them up. We hold them off. The convoy must escape. The sun was setting over the mountains of Helmand. In the half-light, the silver outlines of the MiGs appeared on the horizon, diving fast toward the valley. Harris heard the radar tone. Lock achieved. Sarah's voice was calm but edged with steel. Weapons free. Sidewinders hot. Over the radio, a MiG-29 pilot shouted in a heavy Afghan accent, American Falcon, you are in our sky. Today you die. A faint smile touched Sarah's lips. The sky belongs to no one. Let's dance. The 2 MiGs broke into a split maneuver, one dropping to the left flank while the other dove from above, a classic pincer move. Sarah lit the afterburner and pulled the F-16 into a vertical loop. The enemy jet streaked beneath her, overshooting. Fox 2. She fired a sidewinder. The missile locked onto the tail heat and, with a thunderous explosion, The first MiG erupted into a fireball. Harris shouted in triumph, "Splash one!" But the second MiG dove from above, missile lock straight on Sarah's F-16. The radar warning blared in a piercing buzz. "Missile launch! Brake right!" Harris shouted. Sarah yanked the stick into a full right roll and deployed flares. Fireballs streaked across the sky. The enemy missile veered toward the decoys and exploded harmlessly. Wiping sweat from her brow, Sarah spoke in a calm voice. "That was close. Now my turn." She dragged the F-16 down to low altitude inside the valley. Using the ground clutter to confuse enemy radar, the MiG-29 stayed on her tail, unleashing bursts of cannon fire. Tracer rounds sliced past her wing just inches away. Sarah pulled into a sudden vertical climb. The MiG chased, but the F-16 was more agile. She snapped into a hard brake turn, forcing the enemy to overshoot and fall right into her sights. "Got you!" Sarah fired her second Sidewinder. A direct hit. The MiG exploded into pieces across the sky. Harris shouted with joy, "Splash two! Both bandits down!" The convoy had cleared the safe corridor. Over the radio, Alpha 6 called out, "Falcon 2-1, we're clear. God bless you. Without you, we'd be gone." Sarah drew a deep breath in the cockpit. She knew she had broken the rules and turned the tide of battle. But in her heart, one question echoed. This is only the beginning. What storm is about to come next? When Sarah Mitchell's F-16 landed at Kandahar Air Base, silence fell across the entire flight line. The mechanics and ground crew knew she had done something. Forbidden, but in their eyes, admiration shone. Inside the briefing room, Colonel James Porter was already waiting. His eyes burned with both anger and disbelief. "Captain Mitchell, you violated direct orders, crossed restricted boundaries, and engaged in unauthorized combat," his voice thundered. Sarah stood tall. "Sir, 20 soldiers are alive today because I did what had to be done." Porter slammed the report onto the table. "Your actions saved lives, yes, but they may have ended your career. The Pentagon will review this." For a few moments, the room was silent. Then Major Harris spoke quietly. "With all due respect, sir, if this is a crime, then maybe our policies are the real enemy." Sarah locked eyes with Porter and said, "Sir, history will decide if I was wrong. But I know one thing, leaving them to die would have been unforgivable." Night was deepening over Kandahar Air Base. In the mess hall, soldiers whispered only one name, Captain Sarah Mitchell. Her story was igniting a fire in every heart. Major Harris overheard a group saying, "If she hadn't acted, Bravo would be gone. Command rules are strangling us." These were the seeds of rebellion. Sarah realized that her decision hadn't just saved a convoy, it had changed the way an entire unit thought. The base intelligence officers quickly sensed the atmosphere. A report reached Washington. Morale shifting. Mitchell becoming a symbol. In her room, Sarah was writing in her diary. She noted, "The real war is not just in the skies. It's in the hearts of soldiers who want to fight freely." Just then, a knock came at the door. Harris stepped in and said quietly, "Sarah, they're calling you to HQ tomorrow. High-level video conference. The Pentagon wants answers, and they're not happy." Sarah closed her pen and silently looked toward the sky. She knew tomorrow would be the greatest test of her life. Night was deepening over Kandahar Air Base. In the mess hall, soldiers whispered only one name, Captain Sarah Mitchell. Her story was igniting a fire in every heart. Major Harris overheard a group saying, "If she hadn't acted, Bravo would be gone. Command rules are strangling us." These were the seeds of rebellion. Sarah realized that her decision hadn't just saved a convoy, it had changed the way an entire unit thought. The base intelligence officers quickly sensed the atmosphere. A report reached Washington. Morale shifting. Mitchell becoming a symbol. In her room, Sarah was writing in her diary. She noted, "The real war is not just in the skies. It's in the hearts of soldiers who want to fight freely." Just then, a knock came at the door. Harris stepped in and said quietly, "Sarah, they're calling you to HQ tomorrow. High-level video conference. The Pentagon wants answers, and they're not happy." Sarah closed her pen and silently looked toward the sky. She knew tomorrow would be the greatest test of her life. The next morning, Sarah Mitchell was summoned to Kandahar HQ. In the conference room, a large screen lit up with the faces of senior Pentagon officials. Their eyes were stern. The defense secretary asked her directly, "Captain Mitchell, did you knowingly disobey a direct order from Colonel Porter?" Sarah paused for a moment, then answered plainly, Yes, sir. I disobeyed. To save American lives. Silence gripped the room. Some faces showed anger, others surprise. General Whitaker spoke slowly. Captain, your bravery isn't in question here. The system is. If every pilot follows hard over command, war becomes chaos. Sarah lifted her gaze. Sir, sometimes blind obedience is the bigger chaos. Our men trust us to fight for them, not abandon them. The screen went dark. Washington needed time to decide her fate. Sarah knew her career now hung in the balance. Outside the base, dozens of soldiers had gathered. As she stepped out, they saluted her. One voice rang out. We stand with you, Captain. A fire ignited in Sarah's heart. This was no longer just her fight. Sarah Mitchell was no longer just a pilot. She had become a symbol. At Kandahar base, talk in her favor was now open. Soldiers and junior officers whispered, if she's punished, then they punish all of us who want to fight for each other. Colonel Porter sensed the rebellion. In a harsh tone, he warned everyone. This is an Air Force base, not a democracy. Obey orders or face consequences. But the silent stares of the soldiers made it clear their hearts were now with Mitchell. Meanwhile, intelligence reports arrived. The Taliban were preparing another major offensive in the Helmand Valley. Bravo convoy was safe, but next time no one might survive. The Pentagon was trapped in a dilemma: court-martial Sarah or use her skills once more. In the stillness of night, Harris said to Sarah, tomorrow they'll either ground you forever or send you back into the fire. Sarah looked up at the sky. In her eyes there was no fear, only resolve. If they send me, I'll go. If they stop me, I'll still find a way. The morning briefing was unlike any other. At the last moment, the Pentagon delivered its decision. Captain Mitchell will lead the strike. The Taliban had established a hidden command center deep in the Helmand Valley, coordinating attacks across the entire region. If it wasn't destroyed, hundreds of lives would be at risk. Sarah put on her helmet, her heart strangely calm. Between the cockpits, Harris spoke. One more dance in the sky, partner? Sarah smiled. The last one, and maybe. The F-16 formation soared into the skies. Enemy SAM sites began to glow on the radar. The path ahead, through heavy clouds, was dangerous, but the target was close. Over the radio, Sarah's voice was steady and clear. Falcon Squadron, remember, this isn't just about orders. It's about everyone waiting for us back home. The mountains of Helmand loomed ahead. Enemy missiles waited too, and Sarah knew. Today would decide whether she was just a disobedient pilot or a hero remembered in history. Explosions rained down across the Helmand Valley. Sarah Mitchell pushed her F-16 into afterburner one last time. Enemy missiles burst in the sky. But her heart was fixed on only one thing, the target. Fox 3, she called, launching her final missile. Within seconds, the Taliban's command center erupted into a storm of fire. The ground shook. Enemy coordination fell silent. Over the radio came a triumphant shout. Target destroyed! Mission accomplished. Back at base, Sarah wasn't met with confinement, but with a standing ovation. Soldiers applauded her. Even Colonel Porter admitted. Sometimes one soldier's courage rewrites the rulebook. Sarah turned to her comrades and said, I didn't fight against orders. I fought for every life depending on us, and that's what being a soldier means. The true hero is the one who fights not for rules, but for humanity. If you want to hear more stories like this, then like, share, and subscribe so that more war stories can reach you.